Should I sell my home or rent it out? Are you really going to ask a listing agent, should you sell your home? Hell yeah, we'll sell it. Come on over. We'll talk. No, seriously. My personal opinion on should you sell your house or rent it out? The three questions I'm going to ask you to see if we can answer that question coming up next. Question number one. Why do you even want to sell in the first place? Are you taking the proceeds and reinvesting it? Are you paying off debt? Paying off debt, by the way, is reinvesting your proceeds. If you've got a 25% credit card that you're planning on paying off, immediately 25% return on investment. Saved your butt a little bit. So why are we selling? Are we looking to upgrade? What do you want to do? In my opinion, you should sell your home if you're going to take that capital, if you need the capital to invest it with a greater return. Honestly, that's the reason I would look to do it. If you've got some personal issues, you're in a tight spot, you need it for medical bills or whatever. Honestly, medical bills, they can be paid at 0%. So I would just let those ride. I mean, I would not sell my house to pay a medical bill. But the first question you've got to ask yourself is, why do I want to sell? What am I going to do with those proceeds? Does it make economic sense to take away a property that is slowly appreciating over time in order to take that equity and do something with it? It may not. But that's the first question I would ask. Do the economics work? That's number two. If you were to rent it out, are you going to be able to pay your principal, your interest, your taxes, and insurance, and still be able to rent it for more than what you're paying in those things? By the way, that's not all you have to pay. You're also going to need to account for 10% for a management. Even if you manage it yourself, you still want to include that 10% management fee off the top. Also, there's this little thing called capital expenses. This is over time, for the long haul, you're going to end up replacing a roof. You're going to end up replacing an AC unit. Those are your two big things that you're going to end up having to replace eventually down the line. Now, are you planning to sell it before the roof gets to be about 18 years old, before the AC gets to be about 8-9 years old? That's when people start balking at those things. If you are going to sell it before then maybe you don't care as much about the capital expenses. But if you're going to rent it out and hold it for the long haul and build that long-term equity and that long-term wealth, you're going to want to account for these capital expenses. So once you take what you can get for market rent, subtract out your mortgage payment, subtract out management fees, subtract out capital expenses, that's a big one that a lot of people miss. Are you still turning a profit? Are you breaking even? Or are you losing money? If the economics work, and once you account for all those things and you're still turning a profit or even breaking even, honestly, it's still probably a smart move. And the last question, are you prepared to be a landlord or are you prepared to hire it out? What you got to take into account is, are you going to go through the learning curve of putting an ad out, finding renters, screening them? You've got to be available to take their calls if something goes wrong, leaky faucet. You want to address those quickly. So you're going to want to hire a handyman to go and address leaky faucets quickly. A leaky faucet can go from a $50 fix to a $5,000 fix pretty quick with the water damage. So you're going to want to be up on that. There's so many things that, entire books have been written on how to become a landlord. What's the best way to do it? What's the best things to do? So do you have time to take on that learning curve and learn a huge responsibility in order to rent out your house? And if not, then you'll need to hire it out. I personally would probably hire out anything that I was looking at doing as far as property management. Now the question comes, Can you find a good property manager? They're talking to tons and tons of investors. There's a lot of bad property managers out there. So you're going to want to get recommendations. You're going to want to do interviews. You're going to want to make sure that they're how they're going to be handling all of those things that we just touched on, as far as the maintenance and things of that nature. What is their responsibility? You're going to want to have clear understanding of that when you're interviewing and hiring for a good property manager. So that's another question. Do you want to be a landlord? Do you want to hire out property management? And are you okay with putting in a little bit of work to get those things done, to get your rental income coming in, if the economics make sense? And if you haven't already decided to sell because you think you can do better return with that equity position in the short game. Those are the questions I would ask. So ask yourself those questions. And if it makes sense to sell it. And if it makes sense to rent it out. But those are the questions I would start asking myself and thinking about to try to answer the question, should I sell my house and rent it out? The last tip for should you sell and rent out your property. I don't know if you guys know this, but a huge portion of your wealth at the end of your life is in your property. I think it's like 87% of the typical American's wealth is in your property and the equity. So what if you had 10 of those? If you buy your house, move out of it shortly thereafter into a rental, you can rent out your property. Once you rent your property for a year, that rental income becomes income for yourself. So now you can go out and buy another property at the end of that 12 months. The house you live in is not an investment. If you've done any reading, research, things of that nature, the house you live in costs you money. So it is not an investment. But if you buy a house, live in it for a couple of months, move out, start renting a place and rent out your place, you're building up your equity in that first house. You're adding revenue or income to yourself. And when you go to get that next mortgage 12 months later, you're going to have not only your income where you're working, but you're also going to have the income of the rental that you've got. And now, a year and a half later, you've got 2 properties. Do the same thing, rinse and reuse over the next 5 to 10 years of your life. Start early. And in your 30s, you're going to have 10 to 15 rental units. You're going to have a large equity position. And you're going to do it without having to have a whole lot of your own personal money tied up and invested in it. So there's a quick tip. Start slowly building your rental portfolio. As always, I hope you enjoyed this week's video. I'm Bryce Spraggins, your listing expert with Momentum Realty. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment, and I'll be happy to answer you personally. Thanks so much.